Hello and welcome to the I Create Daily podcast. I'm Leora Alderson.
And I'm Diamandis Alderson. We are the mother-daughter co-founders of the I Create Daily brand.
We are passionate about encouraging positivity, creativity, and productivity while bringing you information and resources that support your creative aspirations.
I Create Daily is for creators in every genre of creating, from musicians to writers, crafters to inventors, bloggers to entrepreneurs. So if you are into creating anything, this podcast has something for you.
So tell us, what would support you most in your journey? You can reach us at creators@icreatedaily.com.
Thank you for joining us on this journey. Hello and welcome to another episode on the I Create Daily podcast, a movement for creators serious about their work. I'm Diamandis.
And I'm Leora.
And we are doing a coffee break episode. And this is where we talk about ideas, inspiration, people, just things that we're up to that we hope serve you along the way as well as creators on the journey to making more creations come to life.
Yeah, because here's the thing. So we're sharing these conversations that we have in case they also inspire you. And part of it is because that's how we use podcasts. A lot of times for us, tuning into podcasts with people that inspire us or who are doing work in kindred areas or in areas that we aspire to, it's like being able to be there having the conversation with them in a way together. Yeah. So in this,
and it's like, how many times have we thought like, oh, it'd be so cool to be a fly on the wall in such and such conversations, and podcasts kind of give that avenue of being the fly on the wall.
Right.
Different conversations and interests.
Yes. And I think probably for us, one of the hardest things about, so I think we should back up just and give this a topic. So the topic for the show is art inspiration and creative inspiration in general, and what that means to us and to the world. So we might need to tighten that up in terms of like our actual show notes, and when we get ready to SEO it and see what kind of keywords we can rank for.
All the non-artsy tech stuff that have to happen.
Right. But since this is a conversation that we're basically having with friends over coffee in a way, or chai as the case may be for me today, then it might be a little bit rambling relative to touching on a number of different topics. So like, that's what we're doing. We're in conversation with you. The hard part, I think, for us, as I was getting ready to say, is that when it is that you're not here with us present, then it's hard to have the back and forth to know what parts and what aspects of our conversations and our interviews serve you most, and what it is that you get the most out of, and what it is that causes you to tune in and to want to tune in again. So
and even like the sometimes sticky stuff of what makes you turn it off, you know, like what makes you be like, man, I'm not interested in this episode. And it's fine, you don't have to like every episode. We certainly skip episodes on certain podcasts that don't seem immediately relevant or interesting, or they just don't captivate us right off the bat. And just because that's the thing about inspiration. Sometimes we dip in and sometimes we're inspired, and we dip in and sometimes it's like, not today, I need to shut that door.
And sometimes it has to do with, synchronicity of the moment or whatever it may be. And and we're very much in favor of not wasting time with things that don't serve you. So that's what we want for you. At the same time, like I started out originally, and that is sometimes there is a place to sit in on conversations and to have those kind of conversations in general with people who are doing kind of things that we want to do in the world. So, it makes us feel not so alone, especially as entrepreneurs, creators. We can, writers and artists and entrepreneurs often work alone for long periods of time.
In that creative cave.
Exactly. And whereas if you're in a corporate environment or any kind of office environment or whatever, it could be Starbucks, it could be a corporation, it could be a medical office, a doctor's office, you're surrounded by coworkers and associates and superiors, and then also those that you may supervise all day long, basically. And so there's so many opportunities to just, peek around the corner and talk with somebody and have a quick collaboration. And that's what most creatives miss. And that's where it is things like the I Create Daily for Creators Facebook group comes in handy, tuning into the page, the I Create Daily page, making those connections with people online who are working in similar areas or areas of interest that you are in and or that you aspire to. That's like, it makes us not feel so alone in the journey that can be sometimes lonely.
Yeah. And then realizing that the same emotions kind of flood us all.
Yeah.
You know, like sometimes we get, like, no matter what area you're creating in, whether it's writing or visual arts or entrepreneurship, it's like there are moments where you're so in the zone and you're really happy being in the zone, and there are times you step back and you're like, man, I've been in the zone for so long that I need to remember what the rest of the world is doing.
Yeah.
And, you know, where I am in relation to the rest of the world.
Yeah. And it's like us with podcasting,
Yeah.
it's like we can be so immersed in writing that then when it's time to do a podcast, it's like, will my words come out right? You know, will I be able to converse? You know, even though we get a chance to
question today?
Yeah. Even though we get a chance to interact through our work. I mean, there are times that we're just all super focused on writing and quietly doing that work. And so then you come up for air, and I'm sure that many of you can identify. It's the concept of, if you've been working alone all day, you know, for days on end, then, you know, like to come out into the world and talk, which is why I think so many people like text these days. It's sort of like the art of phone conversations even has gotten a little, it's like easier to text than it is to get on a phone conversation and have to coordinate, you know, the act of when you say goodbye or when the other person says it, and you know, so that you're not stepping on each other's, or that there's not too many delays and pauses and all
and it's
that.
like goodbye, 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 goodbye. How many times do we go back and like, who ends?
Take care. Okay, you too. Okay, bye.
All
of that. All of that.
It's just so interesting, isn't it? That it's almost become so much easier to end things over written word than verbal word, where it's like, everybody have a good day, and there's like, oh, you're the last one that said something. Does that mean, do I have to respond say it back? And like, yeah.
But we don't want to lose that, and so we want to keep that connection going. But for us and for you guys tuning in, let us know, you know, even if you and please don't hesitate. If you're at all inspired, if you at all enjoy or don't enjoy, please let us know what you think, what your thoughts are in relation. Let's have that conversation. What would you like us to cover? Who would you like us to interview? What are your favorites and least favorites of the things that we do? And we share. We got a review from a guy this morning that said, you know, just popped in to say that he really loved what we're doing and to please keep on doing it. He didn't say specifics, right? About what it was. It's just like, you're not sure. Well, I guess maybe he's like loving all of it. That's great.
I guess,
but,
it's
you know,
like, we'll keep doing our thing and like keep on keeping on.
Keep it doing it. And, you know, and most people don't leave iTunes reviews. And by the way, I mean, iTunes is changing, and I don't even know. We haven't investigated the details of that yet.
We're old and archaic and need to figure it out again.
Well, but the point is, I don't know that. I don't think the reviews are going to go away. But if it is that you tune in and you do enjoy the show, we would love to hear from you first and foremost.
Even if it's an email.
Even
Creators
if it's just,
at iCreateDaily.com. We're not going to bite. And if you offend us, we'll just go buy ice cream. It's fine. You know, it's cool.
or maybe have some more of that incredible sweet potato cheesecake that you made last weekend that was just fantastic, which we'll share, which is actually a recipe on your cooking website, which is something we purchased. It's not something you created from the ground up. So it's not like something like we're like, are so proud of yet.
It's the forlorn stepchild that sits in the corner most of the time.
Right now, it's a little bit neglected, but it's still a repository, and it's, you know, like incubating.
Yeah, because I love cooking. We all love eating. It's fun, and sometimes I really get into it, and, you know.
Yeah, and she does a great job, and it's wonderful because she loves to cook and take photos of it, and then I love to eat it. And so
I'm the Instagram generation, and she actually eats food, so it works, right? Like, take photos, make pretty food because it's all for the looks. And they're like, does it taste good though?
Yeah, yeah, fantastic. So anyway, if you want to send us an email, creators, like Diamandis said, creators at iCreateDaily.com. It could just be brief, but whatever it is, we'd love to hear from you and hear your part and your side of the conversation.
Yeah.
But on that, including like, what are you doing and what are you working on, and are you working alone, and are you struggling, and are you surrounded by other creative people, or do you feel like, you know, you're an isolated, like in a desert island, so to speak, with a sea of others with whom you cannot connect? All of that, we'd love to hear more and know more about you, your perspective, and your background.
Just like, who are you? Even, you know, like, we're interested. I think that's the thing about creators. As much as we get stuck in our zones of whatever we're doing, whether it's a zone of being stuck or a zone of creative flow, we want to know who other people are who are creative and out there doing things. And we definitely want to know who you guys are and what you're working on. And And
What your interests
eventually we'll do a podcast on a little bit more about our vision for I Create Daily, but dipping into a little bit of that now. We want to be a platform that also helps elevate your creative, inspiring work, because so we're talking art inspiration. That's what really inspires us, is people in the trenches doing the work and, doing what they want to do.
Yeah, definitely. Seeing people who have come alive, doing work that lights you up from the inside out. That is our mission. Our goal is to foster that, is to support that, is to encourage it, and to catalyze that for those who are ready to do that, to do more of that. So speaking of that, we were talking, so one of the things that we've been enjoying recently as a family and entrepreneur during the workday, as well as the personal time, is just some of the wonderful soundtracks for movies. And our latest enjoyment is the Greatest Showman soundtrack, which we've actually used a few of the songs for some recent art prompts, as well as the Lord of the Dance soundtrack, which we also
Two very different vibes,
and yet both of them about art, music, creativity, dancing, movement, and incredible mastery of skills.
Oh yeah.
So as I was,
and both performance art-based skills,
yes.
Just passion about let's create an experiential performance for others to enjoy and be inspired by.
Yeah. And as we it's hard not to listen to those and to not want to get up and dance. And I've always loved dance and dancing, though when I was growing up in Hawaii, the only kind of dance classes that you could do basically was hula. And at the time I didn't feel like I wanted to do that, because not being Hawaiian by blood, it just seemed, I just didn't care for having haole as much dancing and hula at that time. That was like my internal prejudice. I think it was shy that maybe other people would judge if I were doing it. Just same thing with surfing. It was okay for the women, the girls, rather the chicks, to do body surfing, and boogie boards weren't around yet at the time.
And you were like, I'm going to tackle standing up.
No. I did the right thing. I didn't want to intrude in the guy's space and territory. I was not as confident then. And so in particular, it mattered more to me because that's how I grew up, about what other people thought.
Yeah. I'm sure you had all this pressure from school and stuff to blend. Well, you also, your story about that is really interesting, because your parents moved from Alabama during the heat of
integration.
Racism, desegregation going on there.
Right.
And they were like, I don't want my kids to grow up in an environment where they constantly need to worry about that.
Because they didn't raise
being
us to
prejudiced.
Be,
you don't need to be prejudiced. So why, we don't need to be in this environment that cultivates being prejudiced as a family. But then you moved to Hawaii, and then you had to deal with everybody else being like, well, you're this white girl from the main island, that's interesting, and we're all
mainland
from the mainland. And that was an interesting flip-flop for you. I'm sure it's you moved out, and I'm sure that created a lot of empathy around that. Obviously, that's not what this podcast is about, but...
Well, no, absolutely. It was a determination to never be prejudiced. And, and of course, as you grow, you realize that there are prejudices you have about, about all kinds of things, about colors or about art or about, I love this kind of food and not that kind of food. But when it comes to judging people based on, their appearance or their color or whatever, it was just never
or how they choose to express themselves creatively.
Exactly. So it definitely instills in you a realization that judgment is a really bad thing, and it's unfounded, to be judged based on that. And so, but for a while, then it did regulate me relative to, being really intimidated by what other people would think. So anyway, longer story, story made longer, I guess I could say, is so I didn't do dance. There was ballet or hula. And I wasn't interested in ballet, didn't have a ballet body, and the hula was I felt like I shouldn't. And so I didn't. Years later, it's wow, okay. So I ended up taking classical Indian dance, which is a culture, but it was a culture I had gotten into. Diamandis Indian, but it's before she was even a known entity before she was born, before we went to India and
we joke
her.
around all the time that like you must have been Indian in a past life, because you are definitely more Indian in terms of the cultural things you do and are drawn to.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I love the food.
Yeah. Right. But you keep saying you're probably part Mexican, born in India somehow because you love Mexican food as much. But I don't know, when we get the curries going, you definitely love the curry. But yeah, so anyway, back to what was the point I was trying to make? Sorry. We were dancing, back to dancing. So anyway, yeah, I would, if I had it to do over in the era that we're in, I definitely think I would have been a dancer, because I've always been drawn to dance. My point though is not about me or what I like to do, but it is about how it is that music can inspire us. And, I just think that when we hear about people who are depressed or, frustrated and struggling, that there are so many simple tools at our fingertips to help us turn our day around. And we write a lot of articles about that, because we all go through the doldrums and down days and frustrations and struggles and fears and anxieties. But there are also many tools to help us out of that. Some of those tools are the arts. And I think that that's one of the purpose. Part of the purpose of art is to inspire the human spirit to become more fully manifest in our lives, and to help us get unstuck. Because art opens. It's like art is a discovery of the inner world brought outward. And when we do art, it helps us discover that within ourselves. And when we witness the excellence in others, it helps us aspire to be more of that ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
So,
on that point, just when it comes to music is sound waves, and our energy field, whether we're conscious of it or not, responds to sound wave, because it's just another wave. It's another wave. Like energy comes in waves, and music speaks directly to that, like frequency wise. And I would say, if you're an artist and you're ready to, or a creator of any type, ready to make the leap out of any type of depression, anxiety, whatever you're working through, and you want to pull yourself out of that, I would also caution you and become more aware of the music you listen to, because music that is depressing will create more loops of depression, and it will just keep you stuck in that story. It will keep you stuck in that feeling, because those sound waves are literally vibing to your own internal depression, anxiety, feeling down, feeling hopeless. And so it's like, sure, maybe you connect to the lyrics, sure, maybe you connect to the sound, but if you're trying to work your way out of that, you have to approach it with, or at least my opinion is that you should be careful of what you tune into, including the music you listen to, and how it's feeding your energy and your creative inspiration, because it does sync with what you're feeling.
Yeah.
And it really speaks to your energy level. And when you do tune in, like when we listen to The Greatest Showman, or when we listen to Lord of the Dance, or just music that uplifts us, it actually, you can tell the difference, that it makes you feel better. It makes you want to get up and dance. And so that's, I think, part of it too, is like, you have to key in to the kind of creativity that does uplift you, because not all creativity does uplift us.
Right.
And it doesn't always have to. Some creativity, like the point of it is to speak to the dark parts of our journey, and that's fine. But if your goal is to get yourself out of that, then being very aware of what you tune into is important, I think.
Definitely, absolutely. And it's proven to impact us at the cellular level. And, it's so easy. The thing about when we get stuck in loops and down days, negative loops and that sort of thing, it's sort of like exercise and non-exercise. It's like the more we go without exercise, the easier it becomes not to, and the harder it becomes to.
So true.
And it's sort of like, for us, like we typically go out and walk the dogs like mid-afternoon and bike the hills. We have hills in our neighborhoods, and we get the bikes out and bike those hills. And if we haven't had a chance to do that until, say, around 5, we've just been sitting all day, for me anyway, it's easier to continue sitting. Just because I know Diamandis sometimes gets really antsy, especially if you've had caffeine and wants to go out. But there are days that, in particular, if it's a rainy or overcast day,
or chilly,
where you're affected by the weather and you just want to cloister in and pull in. Yeah. So those are the days. So those days that it's harder to get motivated and to get going are the days that we have to push harder to do it.
It's amazing because it's like learning like when to dance with what you feel like doing and when to resist what you feel like doing, and balancing the two.
But almost always, it's like there are a number of times in particular where you felt like where I've gotten down, like less and less energy from sitting, and you've gotten more and more antsy, and you've nudged me to go ahead and bike anyway. And 100% of the time, I am glad, even like there have been times when I didn't sleep so well and didn't feel so good.
And I was being annoying about it because you're like, you don't understand that I got 2 hours of sleep, child.
Yeah. And yet, even, on occasion, yes, you have to just let it go and rest. But for the most part, 100% of the time that we, like, when I say most part, I mean there are a couple times when we just didn't, and I just gave into that. But 100% of the time that I pushed through and went anyway, even when I didn't feel like it, maybe even especially when I didn't feel like it, it is amazing the power that is unleashed into your body, into your being, and into your psyche when you push through what's hard. And you think about it, it's like, it's unfortunate that so often we are trained and indoctrinated through this comfort phase of society, basically, to stop as soon as we get tired, stop as soon as things get hard. And whenever we stop, or even to not stop when we're full. So if full from eating, so if we don't stop when we're full from eating, then or if we don't stop eating until we're full, then it is inevitable that we will gain weight. And if we don't push when we're tired, then it is inevitable that our barrier of possibility diminishes. So we have to keep pushing those boundaries for our world of opportunity to stay more open and more vibrant and more vital.
Definitely. And learning like when to do which is a fun, and I think we all have to kind of find that for ourselves, like when to do which. And at the same time, things like creative groups, whether it's our group or anybody's group, it can help having the perspective of other people on the journey, pushing through some of the same things, gives us all perspective, because we all struggle with different things, even though we're on, quote, the same human experience. We're all humans. We're all going through the same types of emotions and ups and downs, and just having the perspective that, oh, this person is really, really struggling with this thing. It can almost, and it's not about comparing journeys at all, but having the I guess looking glass of like peering into each other's lives reminds us that, okay, it's fine that I'm in this space of struggle. It's something I have to work through, and I'll get to the other side. I just need to learn what needs to be learned in this struggle. I need to go through this struggle. Or even like if you're in a space of comfort, like learning whatever you need to learn through that. Like, you're comfortable. Maybe it's that you learn that too much comfort creates this creative agitation. And then you feel anxious or depressed because you're not putting out the creative output, which really feeds the spirit. And that's just something to learn too. Yeah, definitely. And so when we're talking about things like the Greatest Showman soundtrack, or the Lord of the Dance, if you are familiar with the backstories on either of those productions, they were so phenomenally gargantuan that many people said it couldn't be done. In fact, The Greatest Showman was like in production for years, wasn't it? Do you remember? I think it was something like they wrote the script years and years and years ago, and then they start. 7? It seems like it. Is it? I thought it was that it was written like maybe even 20 years ago, and it just wasn't being picked up by any studios. No, and then the actual production, once they actually got a studio behind it, the actual production took like 7 to 9 years. That's what I was thinking, was around 7 years. And to imagine any actor, producer, director, musicians, etc., to be tying up their time and bandwidth and project roster that long on one production, you never know. It's sort of like reminds me a little bit of Peter Diamandis, who was the founder of SpaceX, and how X Prize. Sorry. He's on the board of SpaceX. Sorry, of X Prize. All these entrepreneurs having space projects. And the concept though is having extraordinary, literally out of this world visions, and just the belief to put it, to believe in it so much that they made it happen
no matter against all odds kind of
and
thing.
it sounds crazy,
right?
Like you start understanding, like if everybody's telling you this thing is absurdly crazy, then maybe you're on the right path, because those things sound insane.
Yeah.
Like Peter Diamandis' X Prize thing, he barely had enough money to launch a business in the era that he started that, let alone to boldly proclaim, I'm going to pay $1 million to somebody who has a revolutionary idea.
Yeah, was it $1 million or 13 million? Do you remember?
It
was millions.
It was a lot of money.
It was a lot of money
that
he didn't have. I think it might have been 13 million. But at any rate, and all of that came about as a result. I mean, talk about, you know, the quote about, if you believe it, it is so, or set things in motion in the universe, or respond, you know, the Goethe quotes and all those quotes that we all like to talk about, seeing it in action.
Yeah.
You know, it's literally is what they manifested.
And it's a superpower.
It is. Yeah.
Like you see all these superhero movies, and it's like they're so immediate in their ability to bring whatever into reality, and yet it's just a metaphor. Like we have that too. It just takes longer.
Yeah.
And it's like their hero story is the grit and perseverance of going through the struggle to then become the super strong version of themselves, or whatever it is, you know, whatever thing they have going on, whatever origin story. But ours is like literally the exact same thing.
Well, I'm so glad you mentioned it, because we didn't talk about this before we started recording, but that was where I was actually going to end up with this. Yeah, so this is fantastic. Back to The Greatest Showman and Lord of the Dance for a second. So as we were watching The Lord of the Dance, and the kids grew up with this, you guys, you know, perhaps you did as well, where Diamandi and her brother were little kids, and you know, they used to just dance around the house, the living room like crazy, you know, and then they'd stop and watch, and they dance like crazy, just, you know, frenetically. And Diamandi even took Irish dance lessons for a while, and as did I for a little while, and just because we loved the dancing and the music so much, I wanted to be able to dance to it. But and then until you got to be teens and you're like self-conscious, but you know, when you're little kids, it's like you were just dancing like crazy. So we had so much fun finding the DVD on eBay and buying the old one, because you can't find the original Lord of the Dance on Amazon or anywhere for sale except like as a used one right now, at least at this point in time.
You can find it on YouTube and stream it.
And yes, you can stream the old, very poor quality video on YouTube.
But it's so good.
And there is a new Michael Flatley story where he actually, as he was turning 50, Michael Flatley, the original producer and star dancer for choreographer for Lord of the Dance, brought it back to Dublin, and then many other countries, and they did another sold out like a stadium size auditorium called I
think it was just Lord of the Dance.
No. I mean the actual auditorium.
The
had
Dublin O2 or something.
Yeah,
like
I think
that.
it was like that. So anyway, they sold out, and this is like right around, you know, when dancers, like he was turning 50, and everybody told him, "Oh, you're too old, and it'll never work," and all that. And it
like the dancing career is so short.
And it was phenomenal. Yeah. So we'll link to that, because if you guys haven't seen that, that is available as a newest video, and it is fantastically inspiring. So definitely recommend you watch that. Yeah. But as we were watching that, what I was sharing with the family is that, you know, I love all of that. And there's, you know, to see the mastery and the beauty of that in motion. And yet, as much as I love dance, I don't think I would ever want to spend so much time, all the time necessary to master that particular dance, or any particular dance, that well. So it's not that I wouldn't love to master it, it's that I wouldn't want to devote all my creative time to that, because that's what it requires to be that fantastic. To master anything means going a mile deep and an inch wide, and we tend to be a little bit the other way. We have so many things that we're interested in that we're a little bit more a mile wide and an inch deep, in that we're touching on and picking up and synthesizing many different areas of creativity. So whatever it is for you, it's not that there's a right and a wrong. We're just saying that, I'm saying, while I admire that,
we use it as fuel.
And we use it as fuel, exactly right. And so that's the thing that brings to mind, you know, about the superhero movies, because to me, these dancers, and I'm pointing in this direction because I'm looking at the notes of the show. These dancers, do you see them? They're standing right here.
And if you're on audio, you're not even seeing that. You're just hearing the voice point.
Right.
Hear my voice point at these dancers. Okay. Sorry.
That's right. So seeing human excellence, seeing art, you know, in even beautiful creations, even if you're the artist creating it or the author who's authored it and you don't think it's perfect yet, putting it out there and putting your work and putting beauty and creativity out into the world is a part of what inspires others to do better, be better versions of themselves, and to try things that they may never have tried.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So it's the same with like watching performances like that, watching beauty in motion, and hearing it and seeing it reminds us to, it's sort of like, oh, here's the funny, remember how Nikolai, my son, Diamandis' brother, was saying one night we were watching sort of like an inspiring, I think it was like a Tom Bilyeu, something inspiring.
Oh, yeah.
And he thought we were going to watch like a movie, and so he had gotten but we weren't, and so we were going to watch like an inspiring interview, probably on Impact Theory.
He was, bless his heart.
Go ahead.
And I mean that in the most loving way. I almost never say that, but like, bless him. So we were watching, he thought that we were watching a movie, but instead we were watching a Tom Bilyeu interview of Impact Theory, and he has amazing interviews. They're vastly entertaining, at least us. Not so much to my brother, but we're watching it, and he
enjoys it when he watches it, but he
has to get into it, and you kind of have to trick him into watching it, and then he's like, "Oh, right, this is good." So we're watching it, and he has this plate of nachos, and he
got a huge plate. All his plates are huge of nachos. It's like, his thing.
Yeah.
Washing and eating.
Right. And he sits down and he's eating his nachos and he's watching this inspiring interview and he's getting like increasingly agitated. And when we get to the end, he's like, "I hated my nachos." And we're like, "Why?" And he's like, "I thought we were going to watch a movie, but we watched something inspiring, and now those nachos they were kind of gross."
So which gets back to what we were talking about earlier about the tools and things that we have available to us at our fingertips.
But it was really poignant.
It was very poignant to help, for him as well, to help us get out of it. And that is, there are certain foods, there are certain sounds, there are certain activities, there are certain people, there are certain, music, whatever, that help us get out of the negative space and into positive spaces, and vice versa. So, like if we're going to have like a totally, blitz out, rock'em sock'em, entertaining night of superheroes, popcorn, not just whatever, that's like the norm, right?
Yeah.
And yet, it's sort of like part of why for me it's not as big a deal, and I would rather watch something like The Greatest Showman or Lord of the Dance. Well, because the thing about superheroes is superheroes can be so phenomenal that we can't relate to it. But if we see humans doing fantastic things that we can that's actually humanly possible, then it helps us realize what's possible for us, and it helps inspire us to do more. Because if you're watching like a Lord of the Dance, it's hard to sit there and devour a plate of nachos.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah.
Because you're
seeing
people.
Celery, carrots, please.
You're seeing people
bring the rabbit food brigade.
Yeah, you're seeing people in peak performance.
Yeah.
Putting their all.
Oh yeah.
Into it, and when you see someone at peak performance putting their all into something, it inspires us. Now, if it makes you feel negative about yourself, if it makes you like at that point where Nikolai didn't really enjoy his nachos anymore because it made him feel less about what he was doing and the choices he was making, just didn't fit the scenario. I mean, it would be like, wearing your hoodie and your sweats to the opera with a hot dog. It's like if you're going to go to a football game or the baseball game, then you've got your hoodie, your sweatpants, and you've got your hot dog, and your baseball hat, whatever it is.
If you go to the opera, you better
in
context, out.
in context, right? Yeah. Everything has its place, which is why the superhero thing has its place. Now, okay, as a superhero fan, and sitting here glaring at me when I'm talking about
like a verbal essay is coming your way, right?
Question. Does watching superhero movies inspire you, do you think, to be a better version of yourself?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, let's hear it.
Yeah. And this is where, like, I get both perspectives. And I think this is where I like Marvel and the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the Marvel stories more than the DC stories. And I'm going to get shade for this, but that's fine. I like Marvel.
It doesn't matter.
It's totally fine. Come at me, bros. But anyway, what I love that Marvel focuses on is that all the, quote, heroes in the Marvel cinematic stories and the Avengers and all of that, the Iron Mans, the Captain Americas, they first started as humans. They first started as human, normal people. My favorite is Iron Man. And yeah, he's a pompous jerk for many of the stories, but he created his own hero out of the power of his mind and mental stature in life. He developed his brain, and yes, and he was thrown into this situation where it was life or death, and he was going to be killed, and he was already having issues with his body. He was in, like, things were going on as a human that would have killed him, and with it, the power of his mind, he made himself a hero.
Right.
He did not come from a faraway planet. No offense to Superman, but, no offense to Wonder Woman. It's fantastic. Women empowerment. That's great. But all of those types of stories tend to be like this alien being that's not human comes and swoops in and saves us. And they're always just there to save us. And whereas a story like an Iron Man and even a Captain America and even the Hulk, even though they were scientifically enhanced, they are still fundamentally human, and they still went through fundamentally human struggles of being the little person and needing to grow up with being something less than they were, and still showing up to the plate every single time. Captain America was this scrawny, scruffy kid.
Right.
And yet he was the best soldier as a human. Like, every single obstacle that was thrown to him when he was like this wimpy, scrawny twig, he stepped up and went above and beyond, which is why they selected him. And so he stepped into being a hero based on his merit.
Right. He was already a hero within.
Right, exactly. And that's what really inspires me about, like, Iron Man and Captain America and even the Hulk and his struggles, is like, these are the characters that, as a human, they already stepped up to the plate. Right. It wasn't that.
Sure. I love that.
Yeah,
so how does that inspire, like, after watching any of those on a given night, how do they inspire you to be a better version of yourself?
Like, it reminds you, like, where are you not stepping up, or where am I not stepping up to my own plate, or like, where am I not, like, what am I doing that's less than, or what am I doing that, how am I excusing something because it's fun in the moment, or how am I, like, there's different questions you ask yourself. Where am I not stepping up to a plate? How am I not serving in the best way that I could? And just, like, because, like, those are metaphors. The hero stories are just metaphors of, what about me? Like, if I see a problem in my day, what am I doing about it? Or am I just sitting there and being like, oh, well, this is, such a problem and there's no solution, because we definitely all have those days too.
Sure. Be your own superhero, like back to the hero's journey concept, right? So the hero's journey is really about the journey into discovering ourselves and our own greatness relative to ourselves and our choice about it, and who we become in the journey of our life, basically, which is why it's so important to not delay pursuing your dreams. There's never going to be a perfect time. Like we've talked about before, everything we've done with I Create Daily, it's not been a perfect time to do that. And maybe it doesn't exist, and not to say that there aren't sometimes perfect times, or so it seems. For us, that hasn't been the case for pretty much everything we have done, and yet we pursued it anyway. And every single time we do, it has expanded our capacity to do more and has led to so much more. Yeah. So don't delay creating the work that's important to you and pursuing it, no matter the challenges, to do it. And don't let yourself get stuck in focusing on how far away your goals may seem from where you are now, if that's the case, because we have to focus on the gains, not the gaps. Focus on the next step in front of us, not how far we have to go, because that's the only way to get there. And daily steps in the direction of your dreams is a proven path to success. So go for it. Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Bye, guys. Bye.
Thanks so much for joining us for the I Create Daily podcast. Please let us know what creatives you would like us to interview and what topics you would be interested in hearing more about.
And if you enjoyed this show, please leave a review on iTunes. We value your feedback. We read all the reviews, and it just helps us get the word out on the I Create Daily podcast. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.